Distinguished gentleman from Oklahoma, Chairman Cole.
Thank you very much. Two of my favorite members, obviously the senior member of my delegation, so my leader, Frank Lucas, and my good friend and classmate, and I had the privilege of sitting on that committee at one time earlier in my career. And I think people on either side of the aisle would tell you you're two of the best legislators we have. I mean, you both really are excellent legislators, and your committees are serious committees, and there's always partisan issues, but it always amazes me how much bipartisanship comes out of both of those committees. This is a really good example of that process at work. I'd be remiss, Mr. Lucas and I do have a difference of agreement that'll be settled on Saturday afternoon in Stillwater, but we agree that the best team in the Big 12 is on that field, and we'll know which one is the best team when it's over. It's going to be a great game. I do have one question for both of you. I have looked at legislation, and I sit on Interior Appropriations, and so we quite often fall victim, as we see funding for the forestry department, things ravaged by these wildfires, and we treat one kind of disaster one way, another kind another. I see you've tried to address this in I think some very thoughtful ways, but the administration seems to have a little difference of opinion, just judging from their statement. Not that they're opposed to the bill, but they see things a little differently and are going to work in the process with you. Could you explain to me what their concern is and in your view, why it, I would assume, is not justified, or just where we're going on that, on the Stafford Act in particular?
No? Actually, okay, that's too cute. The difference comes from, there are two processes here. What we're talking about and trying to emphasize is the reforms, which means you won't have to spend as much money in the future. What the other element is how we pay for what's already taken place and how we pay for extra wildfires that may develop in the future. There are multiple approaches to do that. The one that we have involves setting caps and going through the FEMA process. That has to do some kind of adjustment with the caps that are there. There are other types of programs or ideas that are out there on how you can actually fund that process. I'm really agnostic as to which of those approaches you use. Either one can work as long as you attach the reforms to it. Because if we're just talking with how you pay for putting out the fires, we miss the intent of it, and we miss the point. And we will always keep exacerbating the cost unless you get the reforms with it. So I'm satisfied with what we have right here, which will deal with the caps. But I'm also saying if there is another way of actually funding this, as long as you couple it with the reforms, we can deal with that.
Well, and to be fair, I think the administration makes clear they do support those reforms that you're doing in that area. And you're absolutely correct, of course. That's the critical part of the bill, is to try and avoid the problem in the first place. But problems happen, and so how we deal with them in the aftermath has created and compounded those problems, as I know both of you know.
And I also assume that once we get this bill through the House and over and then go to some kind of conference with the Senate, those issues will be discussed repeatedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I have tremendous faith in both of you and both of your committees. I mean, I know it's refreshing to hear somebody say, yeah, we're agnostic about this, we're going to work this out, because I know you guys will. I've watched you do it in legislation before. So I'm pretty comfortable. I'm very comfortable with the bill and very comfortable with the people that'll be making the final decision when we sit down with the Senate as to what that package is. I know you guys both bring a lot of good sense and a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom to the process. But thank you for looking at it. I mean that quite sincerely, because it sure makes our budget, our spending difficult. And these are reforms that are really, really necessary. So it's the hard work of real legislating instead of, chest pounding and finger pointing. We do a little bit too much around here. So I commend you both and both your committees for approaching it in that manner.
Thank you.
Sure.
You want to give me the line on the game?
You're talking about the World Series?
We're
talking
not
about
playing
the
in
real game.
Norman, so it may be wild.
I think a high-scoring game. Two great offenses. Anyway, a little bit of good luck on. I hope no injuries to your team on Saturday. But beyond that, I'm not prepared to venture much further.
The only tragedy would be to soften each other up for the rest of the Big 12
That's exactly
league in the
right. So
fall.
we can't allow that to occur. So we want good sportsmanship on both sides. And you go take care of Iowa State for us. We'll take care of TCU for you, and we'll maybe settle this thing down the road.
Very accurate.
Okay, yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much.